Hello everyone, and welcome back to Wednesday here on the Pagan Perspective. I'm your host Eric. This week we're showing you our altars. This week we got a request from our churchman 2 to show you guys our altars. Well, there's only a slight problem with that for me, and that is I don't currently keep an altar up. If I need one, I will set one up. It's very rarely that I feel that I need to set one up, and when that happens, I usually do it outside in a large space. Unfortunately, it's kind of raining freezing rain at the moment. It's not snowing, but I don't want to go outside and play that game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you one of the things that I used to do when I was younger, when I was still living with my parents, when I was uncertain what I was doing, but I wanted to have something laid out in my room, something that if you use the runes, you could very easily do this and it would go relatively unnoticed. Now, the first thing I would do is, if I wanted an altar cloth, I would get one that I liked. I use this to, this cloth, you guys have seen it before, that I use for readings. You could do that, or if you wanted it to be less noticeable, you would likely want to forego the altar cloth altogether. Now, this is the area that I used to have my altar in the first place. So what I do is I just kind of lay this out, and sorry if you can't hear me very well, but I lay it out, and the four corners, the four elements are kind of in their area already with the cloth, which is really awesome. It came from the Druid Animal Oracle, if I remember correctly. Somebody told me that, and I haven't really checked to find out. But then what you do is you lay out the elements and the god and goddess, and if you want to go that far, you can. If you don't want to put out the god and goddess, you don't have to. If you don't want to lay out the elements, you don't have to. It's basically one of those things where whatever you want to do. When I go to lay out an altar, I like to do the four cardinal directions and the elements that I associate with them, and then a god and a goddess figure, and then I'm happy with that as an altar. Those representations, like the athame and the wand and the candle and incense and feather fan, whatever, you can totally use any of those things. If you happen to have them lying around, it's going to look like a weird conglomeration of stuff on your dresser or wherever you happen to put your altar. If it's something that you're trying to keep from people, which, I don't recommend it specifically, but I understand the need for it sometimes. But if it's one of those things where you're trying to not gain the attention of others, what you would then do is use regular household items that are not going to look out of place in your possession. It's not a weird thing for people to have fans or flutes or incense burners, unless incense is something that is not allowed in your place of residence. When it comes to the athame, your athame could be as simple as mine used to be, which used to be a Leatherman. I dedicated it specifically so that it was a working tool. And then, everything else, there are other various things, rocks and crystals and whatnot, to use as representations on your altar. So what I liked to do, and what I still like to do on occasion, if I feel the need to set up an altar, which has not happened in a very long time, but I like to choose specific runes and place the rune with the closest meaning, or in my symbolic ideology, what I like to view as the element. I take the rune, like for earth, I use uruz, and uruz as earth goes in the north, and my altar is going to look all backwards because that way is north. And then I move on to air, and air is Ansuz. Ansuz is very much about the mouth. So Ansuz goes here in the east, and then, oh, that's the wrong one. And then fire in the south, Kano, the torch. So I place Kano in the south. And then for water, I use Laguz, and Laguz is the river, and specifically water. So I place that in the west, and then I decide, okay, well, I'm going to use Tevaz, because Tyr is the warrior god. It is a representation of Tyr. There are several more. I could have used Ansuz for the god, because Ansuz is Odin's rune, but Tevaz as the god rune. And when I go to the god rune, or when I go to put the god on the altar, I generally decide which of either air or water he is more associated with. And because Tyr is actually more associated with earth and fire, I'm going to put him in between earth and fire, but I'm going to put him closer to water as opposed to air, because he's not so much about communication as he is keeping promises. So then I choose Perthro for the goddess, because it is the most, well, with the exception maybe of Bracana, Perthro is the most feminine rune there is, because it represents the chalice in the womb. So then I put that in the place for the goddess. I also happen to, very much like Kara said yesterday, I'm right-handed and male, and therefore most of the time the god winds up on the right-hand side of the altar, no matter where I'm standing. It just kind of weirdly works out that way. Sometimes it's an association of which element, and sometimes it's just an association of my right-hand god, and God is the right hand to me, as opposed to the other way around. But then I lay them out on the altar, and it looks like a bunch of rocks on a cloth, or it looks like a bunch of rocks on top of my dresser. And if I were trying to make this not quite so obvious, I may just flip them over, knowing that the symbols were there, and the energy and the intent was also there still, just trying to keep it from being seen by prying eyes. So this is basically all I really wanted to share with you guys this week. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to post those in the comment section below. I'm just giving you guys an example of, you don't need all the stuff. You can do this very simply and very quietly, and keeping it under wraps and whatnot. But it's more fun to have the stuff and be open, but it's really an unnecessary thing, which pretty much everybody has said this week. I just wanted to add my 2 cents. So, outside of that, again, comments, questions, concerns, put them in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, everybody, and of course, until next time, Odin be with you.
Then in walked a stranger, a traveler in gray, and no one took notice while he paused on his way, save the man in the corner, who beckoned him near. Come sit beside me and I'll buy you a beer. The stranger came to him and sat near his side. The old man just smiled when the barmaid passed by. People think that I'm crazy just because I am old, and they tend to ignore me and the tales I've told. You be wise to pay heed to the words I would say. They could save your life or your soul someday.